chapter 24 has the distinction of being the longest chapter in Genesis. Well, a lot goes on here, but we can basically break it down into three different segments. The first segment centers around not Abraham, but his servant, his unnamed servant, who is under the instruction of finding Isaac a wife. And using the instructions that Abraham has given him, goes directly to Abraham's own family. The second part has to do with the introduction of the servant to Rebekah and her brother Laban, and their acceptance of Abraham's son to marry Rebekah. The third part is where Isaac and Rebekah first meet. Now, interestingly enough, since this is in the Bible, this sounds to me like Yahweh telling us this is how you should find a suitable woman for your son. Basically, the children have no say in it. The argument put forward here is that the children don't get a choice. They don't get to make that decision. The families get to make that decision, and there's certainly plenty of societies around today that still operate under that kind of perhaps logical thinking. I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about it if my family said, this is the one you're going to marry. But I know in the country that I live in right now, even though it has a lot of modern thought to it, there are still those especially in years past when I've had local colleagues, they'd go away for the two major holidays, and they would come back married. And they didn't know they were going to get married. That happens all the time over here, especially, I think, if the families are from smaller cities. I don't think that operates like that in the bigger cities, but in the smaller cities. But there's a lot of rich discussion and debate that one could have that Yahweh has given us within this chapter about how to find a suitable mate. Now, years ago, we did our series on marriage, but how about a series on courtship or dating or, just finding a suitable mate? Well, guess what? Courtship and dating really aren't in the Bible. At least not in chapter 24 here. It reminds me very much of the scene in Fiddler on the Roof, either the play or the movie, where, of course, Tevye sings, "Do You Love Me?" to his wife. His oldest daughters are now getting married, and all this time, all these years later, after all this time, "Do you love me?" And she says in the song, "What's the point of that?" And they never met either. They never met until the wedding night. It was a whole arranged marriage, and it worked. So I think Yahweh is saying is that you don't fall in love and then get married. You get married, and then love builds from that. That's what it sounds like to me. But let's go ahead and read chapter 24 and see what Yahweh has in store for us in this one, because I'm sure that it will shake you up as much as it shook me up. Those of us coming from a Western mindset. All right, verse 1. By now Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Yahweh had blessed him in everything. And we know why, because he had stayed faithful all this time. Abraham said to the servant who had served him the longest, okay, this is the unnamed servant, who was like the head of the household in many ways, who was in charge of all he owed. That's quite a position to be in, being the longest, most faithful servant, and we will see that he's the most godly also. Very, very godly servant. So we all need those kind of employees that would serve your company if you are a business person in the same way. So Abraham treated him very well, and he modeled a very godly behavior to the servant, who then was also, as we can see in these next few verses, how he went about using the Holy Spirit, really, to lead him to the right spouse for Isaac. Abraham said to the servant who had served him the longest, who was in charge of all he owned, "Put your hand under my thigh." I guess that's some kind of signal, some kind of promise, because I want you to swear by Adonai, God of heaven and God of earth, that you will not. Well, this is not. He's not telling us what to choose. He's telling us what not to choose. All right, don't go there. And where is there? That you will not choose a wife for my son from among the Canaanites. From among the Canaanites. This is interesting. We'll explore that in a minute. Among whom I am living. But that you will go to my homeland, to my kinsmen, to choose a wife for my son Isaac. Let's break down what Abraham is saying right here. All right, we know that Abraham is in the promised land, but he's surrounded by essentially Nephilim tribes. We can call them Canaanites if you want. He calls them Canaanites, but we know that they are more than likely Nephilim tribes, humanoids, half human, half fallen angel, or at least descendant of that. We're not sure how many generations are past at this point. And so we're not mixing. Now, there are those who will say at this point, it reminds, okay, if I can quote another Broadway musical, just came to my mind, West Side Story, where Anita and Maria is singing about how much she loves Tony, and Anita is telling her, you can't, a boy like that, who kills your brother? Stick to your own kind. Stick to your own kind. And I live in a society that pretty much says that too. These days, they say that. Now, when I first came to that country, it was much more open to not sticking to their own kind, to finding a spouse from another country. Now, over here, not only will they not find a spouse from another country, they won't even find it from another province within the country. It's from their hometown. Stick to your own kind. Now, I thought that was very silly when I first started hearing about that a few years ago, because it may be the right thinking, but for the wrong reasons. Their reasons were very superficial. Well, I like rice and he likes noodles. That will never work. I mean, it comes down to rice and noodles. Another one would be fear-based. If we're not from the same hometown, we will run out of things to talk about. I heard that one many times. Well, if they're from the same hometown, they have the same family, and they can talk about the same things. They're scared to death that they will run out of things to talk about. That was not a problem for me. And rice and noodles were not a problem for me, figuratively or literally, either one. We can explain those away as ridiculous. But what is Yahweh saying here? This goes back to what Paul says in the New Testament, in one of the Corinthian letters. He says, of course, that do not be unequally yoked to non-believers. This is the foundation for that verse. And we're talking about in business, we're talking about in marriage, we're talking about in everything. So maybe here in this particular country, they got the right idea, but the wrong superficial thing. Now, you will find people that say races should not be mixed. Well, perhaps that's what Yahweh is saying here. Maybe you should, as Anita in West Side Story says. Maybe you should stick to your own kind. Maybe there's something to be said for that. Maybe there's less issues on that. But of course, I think what Yahweh is really saying is that he's working up to what Paul will explain at a later date. Don't be unequally yoked to non-believers. But what is Abraham really saying here? Well, we know that we have nothing in common. We would be unequally yoked, totally unequally yoked, if Isaac married a Canaanite. Our best bet is to marry within the family. Now, what Yahweh is not suggesting here is incest. For all you weirdos out there, God is not approving you to go and marry your cousin, which is essentially what Isaac and Rebekah are cousins. And Abraham and Sarah were half brother and sister. What Yahweh is, I think, suggesting is that you have more in common within the family of Yahweh than you will outside the family of Yahweh. Specifically here, Isaac will have more in common with somebody within his own flesh and blood than those with the Nephilim. But Yahweh is telling us here that not only do you find somebody within the family of Yahweh, but really when it comes down to it, it better be within your own denomination too. Not that Yahweh created denominations, he didn't. It's one body. We're the ones who split it up into thousands of little denominations, which are rather useless. But really, can you think of it? Think of it this way. Can a Presbyterian, a Reform, marry a Pentecostal? No. How? I don't think so. That matters. It's going to matter to the children as they grow up. What are they going to see? They're going to see people butt heads against each other. They themselves will turn into non-believers, especially if you throw them to the wolves at the government-run schools. So maybe it really does come down to, I like rice and you like noodles. It'll never work. Maybe it comes down to rice and noodles. Maybe they got it right over here. And if you are surrounded by nothing but Nephilim, well, that makes the pickings kind of slim. I mean, if we can compare to what Samson did later on, clearly Abraham's choice is much better than what Samson ended up doing, who defied his parents and married somebody that he was unequally yoked with, got rid of her, and then fell into even worse situation with the enemy. So Abraham has given this trusty servant the task of going out to find a godly wife for his son from among his family, who he has had no contact with in decades. He has no idea how they are or who they are. He has not received any text messages. They're not on Facebook, so he doesn't get any status updates or anything like that. Nahor hasn't been tweeting lately. So they don't know. But he's going to go back to his old country and see how they are and see if they can find a suitable, at least the gene pool is suitable. Even if they aren't believers, at least the gene pool is suitable. Whereas the Nephilim Canaanite gene pool is totally out of the question. Abraham's wise enough to know that. Even the servant is wise enough to know that. Maybe we should be wise enough to know that too. What is our gene pool? Our gene pool should be other Christians. Don't be unequally yoked to non-believers. But I can change him. How many times have you heard that one? But I can change him. No, he can't. No, you can't. You can't change him. He'll change you. He'll pull you right down. Just like, or she, just, I referenced Samson. He got pulled right down into the mess. The servant says in verse 5, suppose the woman isn't willing to follow me to this land. Must I then bring back your son from the land from which you came? And he basically says, are you out of your mind? Abraham says to him, see to it that you don't bring my son back there. We're going to go to the land where the gene pool is pure, but you're going to pull her out of there. I'm not throwing my son back into that gene pool because those people are crazy. All right, we know the Canaanites are absolutely not that gene pool. That's impossible because they like rice and we like noodles. That's absolutely impossible. Not going to happen. But at least over there in my family, from the country where I came from, we both like rice, but there may be some other issues over there, so you've got to pull her out of there. Because she needs to be acquainted with Yahweh, with Elohim, Sabbath. The God Almighty. With that heathen brother of his over there. She's got to pull whoever the woman is going to be out of that nonsense over there and bring him into this godly land, into this land here. Isaac probably doesn't even know this conversation's happening. Notice he's not discussing it with him. He's discussing it with the servants. Suppose the woman isn't willing to follow me to this land, must I bring your son back to the land from which you came? Heck no. Verse 6, see to it that you don't bring my son back there. Adonai, the God of heaven, who took me away from my father's house and away from the land in which I was born in, who spoke to me and swore to me, I will give this land. No, because if Isaac goes back there, he forfeits everything. I will give this land to your descendants. No, this is his land. This is Isaac's land where Abraham is. No, she's got to come out of there and come to this land. I will give this land to your descendants. He will send his angel ahead of you, and you are to bring a wife for my son from there. Looks like that Abraham got some kind of heads up, some kind of word that this was going to happen. Verse 8, but if the woman is unwilling to follow you, then you are released from your obligation under my oath. Okay, so they made this oath, they made this contract, this covenant, promise, whatever you want to call it. If she can't come back, if you can't find a suitable woman, we don't have a plan B yet, but you're no longer under the obligation of this oath. And he says at the end of verse 8, just don't bring my son back there. Don't take him. Don't even let him see that place. That's a bad place. Not as bad as the Canaanites, but it's bad. But there's got to be somebody there that is suitable for my son Isaac that we can pull out of there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning the matter. So that sets up that part of the narrative. the servant understands what his obligations are. All right. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and all kinds of gifts from his master, got up and went to Aram Naharaim, to Nacor's city. Toward evening, when the women go out to draw water, he and the camels kneel down outside the city by the well. He said, and he prayed, I guess it should say, he prayed, Yahweh, God of my master Abraham, please let me succeed today and show your grace to my master Abraham. This is a great prayer. Here I am, standing by the springs, as the daughters of the town folks come out to draw water. I will say to one of the girls, please lower your jug so I can drink. If she says, yes, drink, and I will water your camels as well, let her be the one you intend for your servant Isaac. This is how I will know that you have shown grace to my master. What a great prayer. And he's looking for a sign, but then it says in the New Testament, the Jews are always looking for signs. But technically, they're not Jews. They're just Hebrews. That's another story for another day. Before he finished speaking, Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her jug on her shoulder. Here she comes. The girl was beautiful, a virgin, never having any sexual relations with any man. We'll leave that one alone. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up. The servant ran to meet her. Oh, sounds like he got a word from God on that one. Please give me a sip of water from your jug to drink. Drink, my lord, she replied, and immediately lowered her jug onto her arms and let him drink. When she was through letting him drink, she said, I will also draw water for your camels until they have drunk their fill. Bingo! There it is. And it sounds to me like that was the first one he approached. He didn't have to go through 10 or 20 different girls from this city, from this town, whatever it is. She quickly emptied her jug into the trough, then ran again to the well to draw water, and kept on drawing water for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence, waiting to find out whether Adonai had made his trip successful or not. So he was waiting for a word from the Lord. He was just waiting. Psalm 40, I think it is, says, wait patiently for the Lord. So he's waiting for a word. Is this the one? He wasn't sure yet. He was pretty sure, I think, but he just wanted the final confirmation before he went to his next step. When the camels were done drinking, the man took a gold, right, get this. This is what's going to attract Laban later on. He took a gold nose ring weighing 1/5 of an ounce and 2 gold bracelets weighing 4 ounces and asked, whose daughter are you? Tell me, please. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She answered, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, bore to Nahor. We have plenty of straw and fodder and room for staying overnight. The man bowed his head and prostrated himself before Adonai. Job completed, or at least part of it. Then he said, blessed be Adonai, God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his faithful love for my master, because Adonai has guided me to the house of my master's kinsman. The girl ran off and told her mother's household what had happened. There it is. So here he is. He's coming with all sorts of presents and all sorts of things. She's probably heard about her uncle Abraham. And they don't really know anything about him. It's been decades since he left. They don't know. They don't know what happened to Lot. They don't know anything. Rebekah had a brother named Laban. Ah, look at this. We latch onto Laban's character immediately. When he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists besides. And when he heard his sister Rebekah's report of what the man had said to her, he ran out to the spring and found the man standing there by the camels. "Come on in," he said, "you whom Adonai has blessed." Yeah, he liked he likes that gold. He likes that kind of thing. So he's very materialistic. And we find that out even more so later on. "Why are you standing outside when I have made room in the house and prepared a place for the camels?" So the man went inside, and the camels were being unloaded and provided straw and fodder. Water was brought for him to wash his feet and the feet of the men with him. I wonder how many men were with him. I have a feeling there were quite a number. But when a meal was set before him, he said, "I won't eat until I say what I have to say." Laban said, "Speak." He said, "I am Abraham's servant. Yahweh has greatly blessed my master, so that he has grown wealthy." So he's filling in what has happened throughout the decades that they've had no contact. "He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys," and you can just see that Laban is drooling. "Sarah, my master's wife, bore my master a son when she was old, and he has given him everything he has." Drool, 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 drool. And at that point, the servant just rehashes the entire story again. So let's skip all the way down to verse 49. So he finishes telling all that story and says, "So now, if you people intend to show grace and truth to my master, tell me. But if not, tell me, so I can turn elsewhere." Laban and Bethuel replied, "Since this comes from Adonai, we can't say anything to you, either bad or good. Rebekah is here in front of you. Take her and go. Just get her out of here. Go. Let her be your master's son's wife, as Adonai has said. Just shoot us some gold from time to time. That'll be good enough." When Abraham's servant heard what they said, he prostrated himself on the ground to Adonai. Doing a lot of that. He's just worshiping the Lord God. Every time something gets answered, he's worshiping God. Now the servant brought out the silver and gold jewelry, together with clothing, and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave valuable gifts to her brother and mother. And his men then ate and drank and stayed the night. So, mission accomplished, it seems. Everything's fine. Looks good. The only person who doesn't know what's going on is Isaac. Even Rebekah's in on it. But Isaac's not in on it. Maybe that's the way it should be done. Maybe it's better to keep the son in the dark. In the morning they got up, and he said, "Send me off to my master." Her brother and mother said, "Let the girl stay with us a few days, at least 10. After that, she will go." And the servant, he stood his ground on this. He answered, "Then don't delay me, since Adonai has made my trip successful." Yeah, there are those who want to hinder your success. Usually family members. Not meaning to, that's how they are. "But let me go back to my master." They said, "We will call the girl and see what she says." Good, yeah, see, now Isaac's in the dark. Rebekah, she knows what's going on. They called Rebekah and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will." "Sure, why not?" So they sent their sister Rebekah away with her nurse, Abraham's servant, and his men. There they go, back home. Mission accomplished. Now here we go. I really like verse 60, because this is what they blessed. They blessed Rebekah with these words: "Our sister, may you be the mother of millions, and may your descendants possess cities of those who hate them. What a great blessing. And that's exactly what happened. Even the so-called cultural Christians, for lack of a better term, on this side of the family, man, when they pray in God's will, it will happen. And has happened. Rebekah's descendants possess cities, and there are those who hate her descendants. Even today. Especially today. Maybe more than ever today. Her descendants are hated. Her natural descendants and her spiritual descendants, of which we are. Then Rebekah and her maids mounted the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went on his way. Meanwhile, okay, here we go. Part 3. Here we go. We finally get to Isaac. Meanwhile, Isaac one evening, after coming along the road from Beer Lakai Roy, was living in the Negev, went out walking in the field. As he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah looked up too, and when she saw Isaac, she quickly dismounted the camel. He's not bad looking, I guess. She said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" When the servant replied, "It's my master." She took her veil and covered herself. Ooh. Today, it's the other one. They disrobe immediately instead of covering themselves up. The servant told Yitzhak everything he had done. Hey, we got you a wife. Here it is. Here she is. We went back to your family. The family you've never met before. Your father's family. And look what we brought back for you. We brought back to you a wife. Now the final verse of this chapter, verse 67, is very interesting. So I think what we're going to do is stop here for today, do a little backtracking next time, finish verse 67 and go throughout chapter 25. We'll wrap up Parashat 5, except that we do have the Haftorah and some New Testament verses to go over. But basically it'll be done at that time. So this verse 67, I think, fits better in with chapter 25. You'll see what I mean next time. So join us on the next Jesus' Torah Training, Genesis chapter 25.